Hello and good morning, evening or afternoon, depending on when you are watching this latest Susty Talk from Edie. If you're unfamiliar with the Susty Talk series, it was started in early 2020 during what was lockdown number one for us here in the UK to help us all feel a bit more connected to the sustainability conversation and to learn from a new network of leaders. And we've kept it going ever since, and I'm delighted to be joined on this latest episode by Fiona Morgan from SailGP. She is their Global Director of Purpose and Impact. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
No, whereabouts are you dialing in from today? Is it home working day for you today?
Home working day. We do a lot of remote working. So yeah, I'm at home with the dog, enjoying Friday. So yeah.
Great. Well, hopefully, yeah, pets stay quiet for the next half hour or so. It's the joy of home working, as we've just been talking about off the call. I think we're all used to now attending serious meetings and them being crashed by a toddler or a sausage dog or a cat.
Definitely, or the postman.
Or the postman, yeah, definitely. And I realise we're talking today, and we here at edie have worked with SailGP and other similar organisations in the sector for a while. But for those that aren't familiar, it would be great to start with a brief introduction, please.
Yeah, so SailGP is a new sport. We're a challenger in sailing, and we don't call ourselves sailing, we'll call ourselves racing, because we are kind of the most exhilarating racing on water. We're foiling boats, and so the F50 boats are powered by the wind, powered by nature, and they have small batteries on there that are powered by solar. So we have these amazing F50 boats, and it's a nation versus nation global competition. So you'll see us across the world. We're inshore, so at venues you can see the racing. And yeah, it's a really exciting new sport, and we're only a few years old. So the exciting thing, I think, for the audience here is we've really embedded sustainability and purpose from day one. So it's a really refreshing way to look at the sport in what we do. But it's a great, it's a great new format of racing as well as a sustainable sport, which is great.
Great. Well, I'm not a massive sailing aficionado myself, so I'll probably have to pop down to one of the events to get a real feel of what you're talking about. And it'd be good to, as you say, start with a sort of overview of what SailGP is doing to make sure that it is a sustainable league in operations. You mentioned some of the technology that's going on the boats themselves, and then also what it's doing in terms of purpose, so communicating and working with communities.
Definitely, there's a lot there. I think, SailGP, what we try to do is embed sustainability. So I think the first thing sport needs to do is kind of take the responsibility and realize as a sector, sustainability will affect us. It will affect us incredibly. And actually, we are a critical sector, a bit like fashion, to be able to communicate and educate and engage people in this problem that feels impossible. And so I think, using our platform for good is the starting point. But with that, you need to take responsibility for your footprint, for your whole league. And so the starting point is, what's your carbon footprint? What is our impact on the world? So we've taken responsibility and measured our footprint, scope 1, 2, and 3. And we've set a target for that. And I think that to me is always the baseline, like what's your climate action? But be really honest, what do you do well? What are your issues and how are you approaching them? So we call ourselves climate positive. And the reason we do that is because we want to be this kind of, inspiring sport talking about climate and the problem that we're facing. So what that means is obviously we work with the UN climate neutral now, and we've verified our footprint. And what we do is obviously we have a big reduction strategy, 55% in 5 years, which is pretty ambitious. We're sport, so we're going to go big, and it is challenging being a global sport with the travel involved, how we're going to do that. But that's the exciting, I suppose, creativity of it. And then the parts of our footprint that obviously we can't reduce, we are working with an amazing partner called One Carbon World to contribute that to UN developing country clean energy projects, because obviously, like I talked before, we're powered by nature. So I think, you want to keep everything into your strategic lens of how you see climate change as your sport, as sailing. So I think the first thing is getting your house in order. So for me, that has been our carbon footprint. We're also an ISO 20121 certified event. So again, that's the way you manage your whole sport. So it's really important you have a framework to operate. Because like I said, I think other teams don't feel it's their issue, other business areas, or they don't understand. And so having a framework that helps you educate, set targets, and operate your business is really important. And we're very competitive. We're a sport. So, having this management system, we have a dashboard, which is obviously red, amber, green. And we have that after every event or after every quarter. And that really helps your business understand what you're doing and how we can focus on what we need to do better. So I think that's probably the first thing we're doing, is leaning into it, being a sustainable sport and really understanding what our footprint is, and setting a really robust strategy about how we can reduce it, and work with others in this space.
Great, and we can dive into a little bit of that in a moment, but I realise, Fiona, that we talked a lot about SailGP but less about yourself, to be honest, and I understand that you've been doing this for SailGP since late 2020, but also that you do a wealth of other work to make sport a social and environmental force for good, and that passion really comes across even in a few minutes of talking to you. So it'd be great to hear a bit more about where your passion for this started and some of the other work that you're doing.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I'm a sports professional. I used to play full time, and I was a lawyer by trade, and my first job was in America, IMG, and I worked for a tennis player. And I always wanted to really kind of use the platform of sport for good, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And in my first job, I worked with this tennis player who had this a charity. So I helped run the charity, and we invested in a drug abuse foundation, and we had a women's and children's hospital. And we also looked at the environmental impact of our charity. Being in Florida, we're based in the US, and it really opened my eyes in my first job ever, in my early 20s, to sport's not just sport, and it does great social skills, and it's brilliant for you as a person and your health, but look at what it can achieve. And it was just incredible understanding that connection. So ever since that day, I've really been driven by using sport to do more. And it's not just environmental sustainability, it's social. Obviously, what can we do as well in that space? And so I'm a massive believer in power sport for good. I've worked across rights holders, brands, talent management, and always kind of use that in my job. My last job before here was Sky, so obviously really proud to have worked at Sky in their bigger picture team, and what my responsibility was launching initiatives like Sky Ocean Rescue. So I think the passion of sport for good is also our responsibility to demystify some of these problems and engage people in a different way. And so I think you'll see the way Sky approach sustainability is in a different kind of lens, pass on plastic, Premier League matches, Sky Zero, and that's what I hope my USP is. I try to look at the issues, you take responsibility of them, but what can you do as an individual to engage people who don't understand it, in a different way? And if they do one thing differently, that's success. I think it can feel impossible. And actually sport is, Nelson Mandela says it best. We really do have this power to inspire and kind of connect people like nothing else. So that's where my passion has come from. And, joining SailGP was quite a moment, I think, in sport. So you'll see, which is really exciting, a lot of people being hired as head of sustainability in Formula One or Premier League, and different teams across the world. But that wasn't the case 5 years ago. So it is really exciting. But my job was one of the first, I suppose, to set up a whole team in a sport, to look at sustainability and really drive it from management level down. So when I came in, it was, the boss, Sir Russell Coutts, is America's Cup winning sailor, and Larry Ellison, who's obviously the founder of Oracle, set up SailGP, and they had this vision. They wanted to do things differently, and they gave me the autonomy to really look at our sport and see what good we could do in the world. And so, I have a team underneath me, and I think that's a really exciting new opportunity in sport. And it's also a commercial opportunity for sport. And that's what I always try to say. Realistically, we need sport to do this because we have to, but also it's a huge opportunity for our sector to get new partners, engage differently, and there is going to be, staff incentives, innovation, and commercial bottom line growth because of it. So that's something that I'm very kind of vocal about, because I think it's important to show that it is good for sport, sustainability and the work that my team and others are doing.
Great. Well, I'm sure we won't have any listeners that don't think that sustainability isn't good for business or for sport. So I wanted to dive into some of your learnings on engagement. And you've mentioned some important parts of engagement in sport, so that people want to see that you're getting your own house in order first. They want things to be demystified. They want things to be simple. So what sort of engagement campaigns are you working on, and why does that format work. And I wanted to get a feel for, you've mentioned some other sports going on there, like the Premier League. Do you think that the sailing communities may be easier or just slightly different to engage compared to other sports?
Yeah, I've worked in lots of other sports, obviously, in this space. And I think it depends on, individuals and what they're doing, but definitely being on the water, being an ocean sport makes, my athletes are so conscious and passionate about this because they see it every day. They have to understand nature and they've got this amazing kind of protection of it. So I do think sports on the water probably it's slightly easier. It's easier for consumers to understand. And also I think it's easier because your athletes just get it. You don't really need to, they're not, climate deniers. They just get it and they want to know what they can do differently. And they're up for challenges in this space. So I definitely think, water sports, Volvo Ocean Race have done a great job as well. I think we can kind of lead the way and help other sports learn from what we're doing, which is really exciting. And some of the campaigns, I think, the first campaign, we really started to do is focus on what your staff is your first campaign, right? What is your business doing? How do you embed it in the way you operate? So I think people sometimes forget that and we go external, but actually what we did is how do we embed it in everything our staff think? So when they join SailGP, it's in the induction, it's in our job specs, it's in our offices, it's in our benefits. We have a climate positive benefit for all of our staff, linked to what we're doing, and that's to educate them. So what we do is get them to obviously put in lots of details, understand their footprint, and then we take responsibility for their footprint, their personal footprint, not work footprint. And it lets them understand, oh, I didn't realize my footprint, gosh, that's a little bit scary. And then we give them top tips about how they can change it. So I think staff has been kind of our first campaign, how do we engage them? How do we operate differently as a business? And we've attracted a lot of staff because of that. Because people want to be involved in a purpose-driven company and someone that really lives and breathes it. So I think that's the first campaign. And then there's lots of campaigns, but the second one that I'm really proud of is the Impact League. So we have launched the first ever podium for the planet in sport. And it's this amazing, brave concept based on behavioral science on making sustainable action competitive. So we felt we're a sport. We want to be the most sustainable sport in the world. We're not there yet, but what do? We have a league. So actually, why wouldn't we have a league and celebrate our athletes for being sustainable? And that's social and environmentally sustainable. Obviously, it's not just environmental. It's really, what are they doing around inclusion? What are they doing around reducing their footprint? How are they traveling to events? What are they eating at events? What innovations can they help us, on our operations of the events and on our boats to help? So we launched that last season. First ever in the world. We didn't know what we're doing, but back to what you say sport can do is we can be brave and try these things. Let's just try them and see how they go. And it's been unbelievably successful. There's a leaderboard at every event. So it's exactly like a sporting event, but it's based on sustainable action. And we have an auditor who audits. Simply Sustainability is our auditor. Probably the most strange audit they've ever done is auditing, a sailing teams. But they audit every event because it's important that you really make it kind of measurable and audited. It's got to be done right. And then there's a winner at the end of the season. We had our New Zealand team were the first ever Impact League winner in San Francisco. They were crowned, and we had Dr. Sylvia Earle, give the trophy, which was a career highlight for me. She believed in the concept and loves what we're trying to do. So she awarded New Zealand team for being such an amazing ambassador for sustainability, and we gave $100,000 US to them to celebrate, and that goes to the Race the Future partner. So another thing at SailGP, there's so much to talk about, but another thing at SailGP is every single team when we joined, a bit about embedding it in staff, we said to them, you need to have a purpose. You're not just about winning here. We want you to win and be good at the sport, but what's your purpose beyond winning? What can you do? And what partner? You need an NGO. We've asked all of our teams to have an NGO alongside them in the race to help on the Impact League, but also just to do things differently and drive positive impact in the countries that they're from. So you'll see every single team has an NGO on their wing, very proudly displayed. And we work with NGOs like A Plastic Planet, Parley, Rise to Win, World Sailing Trust, a great variety of global NGOs that are all kind of invested in helping SailGP be better. So the money in the Impact League goes to the team's NGO. So obviously that's a great way again of giving back, but a slightly different model of working with NGOs and partners, but actually one I like because they're invested in making us more sustainable. And we've had some great kind of, collaborations cross NGOs in that scheme. So I think the Impact League is probably the biggest campaign we've done. And one of my kind of goals this season 3 of SailGP, is to inspire another sport. So I'm going out presenting to other sports. So, imagine the Olympics, the IOC celebrating their athletes for being sustainable. So, success for me is taking the Impact League out to other sports and businesses. I have businesses come to me and say, can you help me do an Impact League? I think that, could help us change behavior, and go quicker than we should be. So I think, the concept is based on behavioral science and it's an easy concept. I think sport, it works well because we have competitive athletes on it. But yeah, that's a big campaign and one that I think can be replicated, hopefully, across lots of other industries and businesses.
That is so super interesting. Like we often talk about, we often get people saying, oh, it's such a challenge to collaborate rather than compete in a commercial sense on things that are like early stage technologies. But to hear about something like this and how competition can actually get that further, but all the while with it being meaningful and having that great engagement with NGOs. And obviously best of luck getting that into another sport, and we'll keep an eye on whether that happens. I mean, the thing that's sprung to mind for me is Forest Green Rovers already does something like this, and that obviously during the season all the players have to be vegan, don't they? And they look at their behaviours. But yeah, that competitive element and that international element is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I use Forest Green Rovers as an example all the time when I talk because they really inspire me what they do. And I even love the road to their stadium is called Another Way. And what Forest Green does, beyond all the great action they do, is they think about running a football team in a different way. And that's what I kind of challenge sport to do. It's like, and they're commercially successful. They're doing really well. They've just gone up, they're successful on the pitch and obviously from a partnership perspective. So yeah, they definitely, and I think sport, back to collaboration, which is a really good point. Sport can be really competitive between each other, but I think in sustainability, we all say there is no competition. We've all got to solve this together. So there's a huge kind of movement, I would say, in sustainability in sport about everyone sharing learnings and trying to collaborate better. And even in the Impact League, it could feel a bit competitive. But one thing that I did kind of, when we set it up is I have a whole criteria on collaboration in the Impact League. So they get points for collaborating. They get one of the highest points section for collaborating. And that's with each other, with each team, with each NGO, with global, with my team, like with local impact projects or with other sports. So I want to drive collaboration, although it's competitive. I think it's important, like you said, to always keep that collaborative mindset in what you're doing.
Great. Well, so much to talk about, really. I think we could stay and talk all day about this, Fee, but I'm going to have to bring our call to a close shortly. So obviously we'll be following your work with the Podium for the Planet and getting that into other sports and with the league itself this year, and keeping an eye out for events and news. But for today, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.